appreciated. Pragmata were just the day-to-day stuff of life, right? Like utensils, eating utensils, cheap and plentifully available stuff. That's pragmata, right? But ontologically, the specifically pragmatic character of the pragmata is just what the Greeks left in obscurity. They thought of these proximally as mere things. We shall call those entities which we can encounter and concern equipment. So he's not going to use the word pragmata. Why did he even bring it up? I don't know. Why didn't he just say, we're going to use, for things that we use, we're going to use the word equipment. That's what we mean, right? I think he just likes the Greeks, which I do too. So great, right? He likes to talk. He loves to throw it in every once in a while. So equipment. In our dealings, and remember what dealings means, in our just everyday getting along, doing our thing, whatever. In our dealings, we come across equipment for writing, for sewing, for working, for transportation, for measurement. Could we add to this list equipment for what else? Cooking. What are some of the equipment you would use for cooking? A pot. Spoon. How about baking? We could probably come up with better things for baking. Measuring eggs, flour, a mixer, an oven. Right? That's all equipment for cooking. Equipment for studying. Equipment for, let's say you run track and field in high school and you do, I don't know, the pole vault. Then there's equipment for pole vaulting, right? There's equipment for running. There's equipment for cycling. There's equipment for swimming. There's equipment for wrestling. There's equipment for basketball playing. There's equipment for tennis. There's equipment for almost anything, right? We have equipment all over the place. Equipment is just saturating our worlds, right? The kind of being which equipment possesses must be exhibited. That is, we're going to try to bring it about. The clue for doing this lies in our first defining what makes an item of equipment. And in wonderful Heidegger way. So what makes equipment equipment? The answer is equipmentality. Equipmentality makes equipment equipment. So, and then we might ask, well, then what is equipmentality? And that's what he's going to tell us, right? Equipmentality. If you look at the footnote for equipment, they give you the German word and they tell you that it doesn't really have an English equivalent, but then they explain it with lots of stuff. And so it's worth reading if you want to, but the word is Zeug. And the German word, I think he uses Zeugnis. Equipmentality, equipmentness. Taken strictly, there is no such thing as an equipment. There is no such thing as a piece of equipment, even though it may have seemed deceptive when I said, what are some of the equipment you use for cooking? And then you came up with actual items, right? But there is no such thing as a single piece of equipment. Why? Because equipment comes in a context of lots of other equipment. It doesn't make any sense to talk about cooking if all you have is a pot and you're off on a desert island. So, man, I really want to do some cooking. All right, where's my pot? Got my pot, let's go cook. And that's all you have. Is it for cooking? Could you use that pot for cooking if all you had was a pot? No. The pot is useless as equipment unless it's part of a whole range of equipment that has to be there for you to cook with, right? If you have a pot and a stove, do you still have enough to cook? No. It's got to be more than two pieces of equipment in order for any one of them to actually be equipment. It can't be equipment alone. It has to come in groups. And it probably isn't coming in groups of one or two or three, right? Like minimally, in order to cook, I would think you have to have 4 things. But I guess you could have 3, depends on what you're cooking. Probably 4. If you're just boiling water, does that count as cooking? Because boiling water, you would have to have Well, you have to have more than, you have to have a pot, you'd have to have water, you'd have to have a stove, but the stove isn't going to operate all by itself. It's either gas powered or electric powered, so there has to be gas or electricity, there has to be a flame, there has to be something that's going to cause the flame, which is, you know, a spark, a sparker if it's an automatic one, or a match. And if you have a match, then you have to have something to strike the match on. Like equipment, it just, you see it multiplies. And you can't have just one piece, because if you only have one piece, can you use it as equipment? If you have a pen but nothing to write on, can the pen act like a pen? No, it's not equipment yet, right? So technically speaking, taken strictly, there is no such thing as an equipment. To the being of any equipment, there always belongs a totality of equipment, in which it can be this equipment that it is. Make sense? That makes perfect sense now, right? Equipment is essentially, and now he's going to define equipmentality. It is essentially in order to. They give you the German etwas unzu. Etwas means something. Something around to. Unzu. I don't know. A totality of equipment is constituted by various ways of the in order to, such as in order to be serviceable, in order to be conducive, usable, manipulable, whatever. In the in order to as a structure, there lies an assignment or reference of something to something. X in order to Y. Right? What is the assignment made to a pen? So you have pen in order to write. But really, do you ever just write? Do you ever just write words without care at all for what those words are? You're just writing words. What are you doing? Writing words. What words? I don't know, just writing words. Like, that doesn't even make sense. I guess somebody could do that, but that, like, what are you doing? Painting. So paint in order to make art, right? Or change the color of the room to make it more familiar or happy for me or whatever, right? But so the in order to, you take a pen in order to write, that's probably not the case, right? It's a bigger in order to. The pen, you're writing in order to what? Take notes, in order to get a better grade or to gain understanding. You gain understanding so that you can, in order to. I will say this about Heidegger. Many of you, I know you're reading this being in time and you're going through this with me because I signed it and I get to decide and you just have to come along for the ride. But do you know that there are, and I occasionally get emails from people who have been assigned to read Heidegger's Being in Time by their therapist. Usually, it's not going to be like a run-of-the-mill, it's going to be a Freudian psychotherapist or psychoanalyst who's going to assign something like this to them. So they would be reading Heidegger in order to gain some self-awareness or deal with their mom and dad issues from when they were babies or whatever it is, right? You are taking up Heidegger in order to get a diploma, in order to whatever else, right? And so that is equipment. Equipment is an assignment or a reference between two things. Who's making that assignment? Does the pen get to decide what it wants to in order to? No, it's some Dasein, right? Dasein does this sort of assigning or referencing things, right, from one to the other. All right, look at the very, well, yeah, so he just says, look, these assignments, they always come in blocks, in contexts. So look at his example. Equipment, in accordance with its equipmentality, always is in terms of its belonging to other equipment. Inkstand, pen, ink, paper, blotting pad, table, lamp, furniture, windows, doors, room. All of those things are part of each other in order to do this thing of writing. He's probably writing those things while he's writing with those things, right? And they just became really easy examples for him to give. These things never show themselves proximally. All that means is they never show themselves right up front, at first, right away, right? They don't show themselves as they are for themselves as to add up to a sum of realia, I guess that's the word for it, realia, and fill up a room. That is, Dasein doesn't walk into the room. Like, let's say that you're an author, and you're like, oh, I gotta go write. I gotta write every day, or else I'll never be a very good writer. Gotta go practice writing. I don't know what I'm gonna write. I don't really have a great story to tell right now, but I'm gonna go, and I have this designated room. It's my writing room. And I'm gonna go into that room, and I'm gonna write. So Dasein walks up into his writing room, and all he sees is pen, books, paper, desk, ink, light, window, lampshade. And then he's like, oh yeah, all of these things look familiar. I add them all up. I'm in my writing room. This is not what happens. Nobody does that. Nobody goes into any room ever and first just takes an objective view of what's in the room and then says, oh, okay, that's the room I'm in. Now I got to do this. Right? You just don't live that way. So equipment isn't the sort of thing that you just look at, add it all up, and then decide what it's for. Right? You just already do stuff. That's what he's interested in. What we encounter as closest to us, that is what we automatically do, though not as something taken as a theme, even though we don't notice it, right? What we automatically do when we walk into a room is the room. We just take in the whole. We don't start at the pieces and then add it up to the whole. We just take in the room. And then we start to break it into pieces depending on what we're in the room for. Right? So think, if you go into your family room or your living room or whatever room where you have your TV, and you're there because you want to watch TV because it's going to be your favorite show, and you don't have it on Netflix and you have to watch it when it comes on, I don't know what would that count as. Like, it has to be a network show, right? What, Game of Thrones? Did any of you guys really get into Game of Thrones? And it only came on at certain times and you had to watch it on those days and those times. Okay, so let's say that you're in and you want to watch, and so you walk in the room. Do you go, there's a couch, there's a TV, there's another couch, and there's a little coffee table, and there's a lampshade, and there's a television, and there's a remote control. Oh, I'm in the living room. Right, that's not what you do. What you do, you walk in the living room and you're like, where's the remote? Right? You take in the whole. You just know it already, right? And then the parts, if it doesn't work like it's supposed to, if the room is somehow off, it's because you can't find the thing that you're there for. Who took the remote last? Where did it go? Is it under the couch? Is it, where's, right? That's how you live. In the world that is closest to you, you don't run into equipment as just stuff out there that you add up to filling the room. You run into equipment just blindly as part of your environment. You just walk in places and start using stuff. So, is the room, and we encounter it not as something between four walls in a geometrical spatial sense, but as equipment for residing. Right? We just live in this space. Out of this arrangement emerges, and it is in this that any individual item of equipment shows itself. Right? Things pop out after you already figured out where you are, and you're there in the world, for living there, for being there. Then you're like, where's the remote? Before it does so, a totality of equipment has already been discovered. Before you see any one little piece of equipment that you were looking for, you've already seen the whole. The whole totality is there. You start with the big picture already, right? Computers will never be able to do that. This is the argument against artificial intelligence ever doing what we actually do, right? A computer will only be able to go into a room and go, okay, I'm in the living room, need the remote, right? And that's what an artificial intelligent being would do. They just do it so fast that it may seem an awful lot like the same thing we do, right? If we get really good at AI, that's what they'll do, right? But it will never be what we do, because we don't do that. We do the opposite of that, really, right? Okay, so let's jump down. How is it, what is the word for walking into a room and just automatically seeing a billion in order twos, just all together, all wrapped up with one another, all there, in whole cloth, just boom, a world full of equipment. That word is what we do is called circumspection. We walk into a room circumspectively. And that just means we size it up for what it is in order to. And we see a context or a totality, is the word he uses it, a totality of equipment. Okay, so jump over to roughly the next page 99, look around section 70, that paragraph that begins the work to be produced. So what we grasp, oh wait, I don't want to jump. 1 second. The way that we see things as equipment, I almost jumped past this, is something ready to hand. So you've got this category of things that are the present at hand, right? We're now adding to it another category of things. These are the ready to hand. Ready to hand belongs to the world of equipment. And I'm going to use this example to help illustrate a few different things today. So let's say that, and this is actually a true story, when I was a undergraduate and newly married, my wife and I went to Ohio to work, and I got a job as a brick mason. I wasn't actually a brick mason, I was a brick mason's assistant. What I did was just run the bricks around and carry all the mud for them to build the walls, and got yelled at and stuff. And it was really, really hard work. Well, there was a guy who worked for this brick mason, and he was a carpenter. And his job was to frame up some of the structures that the bricks were going to end up going around, right? And so he had to get there first before the brick masons could come. And if he hadn't done his work, then they couldn't build the walls. And, you know, it had to be done in a really timely fashion. And if the one guy didn't do his work on time, then it would keep everybody from being able to work, and the company would